Hello everyone, I am Demented Kirby, and welcome to my channel, the Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Stage is a series on this channel where games are played in the Commander Tavern for your entertainment. On this episode of The Stage, we have a 3DH match between an Edric Spymaster of Trest unblockable creature tribal deck piloted by me, a First Sliver tribal deck piloted by Saul, and a Gishath Sun's Avatar Dinosaur tribal deck piloted by Stephan. I keep an opening hand of a Forest, Teferi's Veil, Wooded Foothills, Woo Scout, Force of Negation, Mist-Cloaked Herald, and Forbid. Saul keeps an opening hand of a Polluted Delta, Blood Crypt, Wheel of Fate, Island, Verdant Catacombs, Blur Sliver, and Mana Weft Sliver. Stephan keeps an opening hand of a Deathgorge Scavenger, Wooded Foothills, Chromatic Lantern, Bellowing Aegisar, Growing Rites of Itlamok, Plains, and Forest. I win the die roll and start the match. I draw a card, play a Windswept Heath, crack it for a Tropical Island, tap it to cast Mist-Cloaked Herald, and then pass to Saul. Saul draws a card, plays a Verdant Catacombs, cracks it to fetch for a Cinder Glade, and then passes. Stephan plays a Wooded Foothills, cracks it to search for a Sacred Foundry, and passes while he searches. I untap, draw a card, play a Wooded Foothills of my own, crack it to fetch for a Breeding Pool, having it enter play untapped. I tap out to cast Woo Scout. I look at Saul's hand and then pass. Saul untaps, draws a card, plays an island, taps out to cast Mana Weft Sliver, and passes. Stephan untaps, draws a card, plays a tapped Stomping Ground, and passes. I untap, draw a card, play Gaia's Cradle, tap that and Breeding Pool to cast Edric, and then enter combat. I attack Saul with Mist-Cloaked Herald and Stephan with Woo Scout. They can't block, so they each take 1 damage, and I draw 2 cards off of Edric. I cast Hope of Girapur in my post-combat main phase and then pass. Saul untaps, draws a card, plays a Polluted Delta, cracks it to fetch an Overgrown Tomb, and puts it into play untapped. He taps out to cast Blur Sliver. Since his slivers now have haste and can tap for mana of any color, he taps his slivers to cast Muscle Sliver and taps that to cast Gale Rider Sliver. I then erupt in laughter at Saul's epic turn 3 board state. He enters combat attacking Stephan with Gale Rider Sliver, drawing him a card. He then passes to turn. Stephan untaps, draws a card, and plays a Forest. He then taps out to cast Wayward Swordtooth, allowing him to play a second land, which he does, playing a Plains. He then passes. I untap, play a Waterlogged Grove, and then enter combat. I attack Saul with Edric and Hope of Girapur, and Stephan with Mist-Cloaked Herald and Woo Scout. They can't block, so Saul takes 3 damage, 2 of which are Commander, and Stephan takes 2 damage. I then draw 4 cards. During cleanup, I discard to maximum hand size and pass. Saul sees I have mana open for counter magic and wishes he'd drawn a Cavern of Souls, but he didn't. I remind him that I don't bluff and inform him that if he casts the First Sliver, I will counter it. So he pays 2 to cast Predatory Sliver. He thinks long and hard, then declares attack, attacking me with 3 slivers and Stephan with 2 slivers, dealing 10 damage and 6 damage respectively, and drawing 2 cards. In his post-combat main phase, he pays 1 to cast Virulent Sliver, plays an untapped Blood Crypt, then taps out to suspend Wheel of Fate with 4-time counters on it, then passes. Stephan untaps, draws a card, then plays a Windscarred Crag, gaining him 1 life. He pays 3 to cast Runic Armasaur, then passes. I untap, then draw a card, and I enter combat, sending everything to Saul for having hit me for 10 earlier. He takes 5 damage, 2 of which are Commander. I then draw 4 cards, thanks to Edric's ability. I play a Scalding Tarn and crack it to fetch for an island, and then tap it to cast Fairy Seer. It enters the battlefield and I scry 2. I discard to my maximum hand size and then pass. Saul untaps, removes a time counter from Wheel of Fate, then draws a card. Saul's once more thinking long and hard, so I remind him that if he doesn't attack me, Edric lets him draw cards. He decides that attacking me is more important than drawing cards and sends 16 combat damage my way, while sending 3 damage Stephan's way. I get 5 poison counters and Stephan gets 1 due to Virulent Sliver. He only draws a single card from Edric. In his post-combat main phase, he pays 3 to cast Cultivate, fetching for a plains and a forest. The forest enters tapped, and he plays the plains. Then he passes. Stephan untaps, then draws. He pays 3 to cast Chromatic Lantern, and pays 3 to cast Atsokan Seer. Stephan decided not to attack Saul, even though he has no blockers and would draw cards from the attack, leaving his creatures untapped, even though he can't block any of my creatures nor Saul's creatures, and then passes. I untap and then draw. Marveled at how the table doesn't want to politic with Edric in play, I tap Gaia's Cradle to cast Triumph of the Hordes, giving all my weenies +1/+1 and Infect. I then use the leftover mana and tap the island to cast Teferi's Veil. Unable to kill off both opponents, I choose to kill Saul, not only because he's currently the biggest threat, but since he was the one who dropped me down to 9 life instead of attacking Stephan to draw cards off of Edric. At the end of combat, Saul gets 11 poison counters, losing the match. Edric draws me 5 cards, and then all my creatures phase out afterwards. Unfortunately, I didn't draw into anything useful. I look at Stephan's board state, realize that if Stephan drops a land next turn, my death is inevitable. I keep a poker face and pass the turn. Stephan untaps, draws a card, and plays a mountain. Stephan now has the City's Blessing, which allows him to attack with Wayward Swordtooth. Expecting him to cast Gishath, I kept mana open in order to counter it. Unfortunately, Stephan didn't even need to cast Gishath. He casts Raging Swordtooth instead. He enters combat, and in response, I pay to sacrifice Waterlogged Grove, but don't draw anything useful. I take exactly 9 combat damage, and Stephan wins the game. Unfortunately for me, my opponents didn't fall for Edric's politics. Instead of attacking each other to draw cards, they either attacked me or didn't attack at all. They played it smart and tried to take me out of the game before I acquired too much advantage off of Edric. On top of that, I didn't draw into any cards that would have helped me out of my current situation, but at least I was able to send a message to Saul and killed him via poison counters. However, the damage had been done and Saul was able to drop me down to such low life. Stephan was able to obtain the City's Blessing and attack me for 9 damage, thus winning the game. Had I not eliminated Saul from the game out of nowhere with infect damage, he would have probably been a contender to win the game later on. So I took a chance by eliminating him and not Stephan, since Stephan still wasn't able to attack next turn with Wayward Swordtooth nor cast Gishath. That wasn't the case and he ended up defeating me. The vendetta between Saul and myself proved to be the tipping point for Stephan to swoop in and take the victory. As Saul said multiple times after attacking me instead of Stephan, it's about sending a message. Overall, we had a blast playing this very short game and I hope you had fun watching it. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the Brewers, for their patronage. I also want to thank all those who've liked, subscribed, and commented on my videos. You're the ones responsible for helping my channel grow. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Stage on the Commander Tavern. I am Demented Kirby and happy playing.